We hope to see you are there.
Yeah, you know the routine by now. We need you to comment so that we know you're on the live stream. Yeah. And I have a little worm. It's a shadow of a worm. Two viewers? That must be Toby and Toby. And I know Saturday nights are super busy. Spaces Manila has a Broadway themed drag night later at 10. So
That doesn't hurt.
I don't know. There's one lip that's curled down that make it easier to, that's a curled lip. So I applaud your sound effect. Oh my
Hey,
God,
Art.
Art Sam.
We miss you, Art Sam. Prepping the timer. Getting ready for the show. Still don't have music.
37 episodes in. We still haven't decided on music, royalty free or otherwise. So that's a thing. Look at that. Oops.
Oh, isn't it all the way? It's really meant to be beyond. Okay.
So that you have space to like put stuff. Oh, that's so cute.
That is.
I'm the only one as a holder.
Which is fine. We'll be starting in a minute. A 30-minute show.
It's just.
We don't have a theme song.
This is not going to be the theme song. This is not the origin story of the theme song. So,
Dapat may alak sa mga kamay. It's Saturday night.
It's not as fun at home, We really miss drinking at the bar with friends. But then if it's just us at home, I don't know, drinking feels weird for us. Drinking is a very social activity for us, and we definitely prefer to drink with friends.
That is true.
That is the. Oh, who joined? Facebook, more people are coming in.
We don't see it.
Yeah, please comment if you're here.
Yes, please comment. We are starting, actually. We can actually start. It is officially 9.
Well, it would be nice to see who joined on Facebook.
Mahimay, are you going to watch the Broadway night later? We hope to, and that's why we are rushing an episode, and we will see if we can.
Yeah.
So I guess now is a good time as any to get the show started. Timer starts now. This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little shop. Sorry, I was about to say little shop. Little shop of horror. Where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted, obviously, and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for your continued support and always catching the show. Please like the video and share the link now, and we will spend the next 30 minutes talking about
Dune, at least the most recent implementation by Gale Force 9. And it's a super great time to talk about everything Dune because we already got the trailer recently for the new Dune movie. We have, and then just today, or at least in the last 24 hours, Direwolf Digital has announced that they are releasing Dune Imperium, which is a new deck building worker placement board game, also based on the franchise, but using art inspired by the movie. So it's a great time for more Dune stuff. Awesome.
So just checking, we have Kenny on YouTube. Hey, Kenny. On Facebook, we have Art Sam. We have Mai. We have Mitch.
Yay! Although she's saying something hanged. I hope reset your stream. We seem to we see ourselves.
So yes, we are talking about Dune, which has had the games for Dune, and officially the analog games for Dune, because we're not really touching on the digital games for Dune in the show.
Which are many and few at the same time. Okay, so we're gonna jump into things really quickly. Quick primer. What do you need to know about Dune as a setting? Dune, the core struggle of Dune is that there is a substance known as the spice melange, and it is the most important commodity in the known universe because it expands consciousness, it opens up many different mental abilities, it enables interstellar spaceflight because it helps navigators see safe paths through space. So Dune is only found in one planet, thus creating artificial scarcity, and that planet is known as Arrakis, but people really just end up calling it Dune. And that is the setting for where this game happens. You have different factions vying for control of the spice on Dune, and there are many ways about it. It's based on a popular book series, and which also has movies and the like. But then. But yeah, ultimately the game draws more from the books, I think.
Now the game isn't. It's a big game.
He's maneuvering around this tower he's created.
So the game has been around for quite some time. What we are showing you here is one of the more recent editions of the game.
Yeah, this is a recent re-implementation by Gale Force 9, hence the title of today's show, which was released in 2019. But first we have to talk about what it's based on, which is a game that was released in 1979. Before the David Lynch movie.
Yes.
And it's the same mechanics. The mechanics of this new edition are the mechanics of that original 2019 edition. I am scared to read out the names of the designers. Would you risk the designers, please?
I'm going to be bad at this. We have Bill Eberle, Kittredge, and Peter Olotka.
Yeah, so they created a game that is definitely one that tries to capture the feel and essence of the different factions.
It incorporates a lot of mechanics such as bluffing, combat. It has negotiation. It has politics. It has concepts of area control, of auction and bidding, hand management. There's different powers depending on the factions you choose, and even different ways to win. But we'll get into more detail in that in the later part of the show.
Yeah. So for the longest time, though, this game was out of print, and yet had a very strong fan community supporting it on places like Board Game Geek forums and the like. And Toby used, for a while, this was one of his main board game targets, that he wanted to get me a copy of the Dune board game so we could play it. And I was always like, no, it's okay. It's overly expensive.
Yeah. So back then, when this was still not available, only the original one was available, and that would, reach hundreds and hundreds of dollars because it was super rare and
for really ratty copies. So instead,
similar, a different game came out using a different franchise or a different setting, and it re-implemented the system of the game.
Basically, some of the people who were able to who produced the Dune board game before lost the license, but then maintained the game mechanic and created a new game called Twilight Imperium Rex, set in the Twilight Imperium universe.
Now, many know Twilight Imperium as the massive game that has so many miniatures and plays for a minimum of 4 hours.
Yeah.
This is one of the games based on that franchise, and it re-implements the Dune system. So it still has the factions, it still has bluffing.
But they're not named after Dune people.
Yes.
And instead of a giant sandworm, you have a destroyer fleet
of sheep. A fleet of
a fleet of sheep terrorizing the galaxy.
Now, for the longest time, this was the only way that we could think of to play the game.
And we couldn't quite recognize the characters fully. Like, we had a general idea of like, oh, this is probably the Emperor, this is probably House Atreides, but it was never super clear. And it was the way that the rules were refined by Fantasy Flight for Rex. The shortcut's always Rex. Is that they made it a 3-player minimum game, and like me and Toby in quarantine cannot play 3-player minimum games alone. We need to smuggle someone in to play with. Okay.
And then sometime in between the release, the coming new edition, there were other attempts of people to create the Dune experience. There was the Dune Dice game, which was released in 2015, which is a 3 to 8 player game, and it's much smaller. There were a few other print and play unofficial Dune games that were also released. But going back, this still is such a beautiful game, considering what it has accomplished in not just capturing the feel of the novels, but as well as how they presented the visuals and the game mechanics as well.
Welcome to Dune 2019 edition, which is released by Gale Force 9, with now the subtitle of A Game of Conquest, Diplomacy, and Betrayal. One of the beyond just re-implementing the rules, it was definitely an update for all the art and all the game components, and just making the game more sort of up to snuff for contemporary board game releases. And they also added an extra layer of what they call basic rules on top of the advanced rules. The basic rules were a way to kind of make the game easier to get into.
Yes.
But it kind of nerfed also a lot of the crazier powers that make Dune Dune. So really, I would play the basic game once or twice, because ultimately you are going to embrace the advanced rules for all the craziness.
So how crazy are we talking about? This is a quick glimpse of what a game session would look like. You will notice the different shields, which are their little barriers that allow you to hide how much
because you
spice
gotta
you
hide
have,
your stuff.
how many units you still have in storage. It also allows you to keep what we call the generals, the officers, the officer tokens, which are the different people who are better at combat.
Your leaders
That you may or may not actually fully trust, because the game also has treachery cards, which then allow opponents to play them and steal a win from you during battle.
But we're getting deep into mechanics. But yes, all these things, and yes, and then there are just so many powers. Okay, so the base Dune game comes with 6 factions, and then we actually brought out their summary cards here. So of course you have the Noble Fremen, the residents of Dune. You have, of course, House Atreides, our heroes, who will now associate with Timothy Chalamet forever. We have the Harkonnen with, White Hulk, White Drax. We have the Emperor and his forces. We have the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, these Shadow Witch, and we have the Spacing Guild. So these are the 6 possible factions in the base game alone, and it already gives you a diversity of play. Should we talk about... Actually, I had a caption for basic for advanced. I already talked about it. Sorry about that. Let's talk about the basic win rule requirement. So when it comes to Dune, there are 5 strongholds on the map. And you are vying for control of... Or is it 3 strongholds? Oh, crap. I suddenly forgot. 3. 5 strongholds on the map. And this is the board, which is a map of Dune from a weird global view. You're just showing more of you. Yeah, okay. No more Toby. All right. Then, but you have to gain control of majority of the strongholds. And if you control at least 3, I think typically you win automatically. But certain factions have special win conditions also. So it's an area control game, and I'm not necessarily super big on area control. But this crazily works. The one thing you have to comment on the map, I'm sorry, I'm using Toby as a stand. 1, the board is awesome because it summarizes the phases of play on top with very helpful icons. But you will note there are 9 phases of play. And the deluxe edition of the game comes with a custom sandworm. My dad 3D printed my own sandworm. So it just acts as which phase are we in the game. So yay, cool. And then you'll notice that the territories have very different shapes, but they cut across the sort of longitude-latitude lines. Your movement is really defined. It's by territory. You move by territory, but you choose where in the grid you will end, which slice. Because the storm, the big sandstorm around Dune, will traveling around the map at a random sequence, and it will destroy everything that is not on rock, which is the darker territories. Because, sand is dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. So already things like that, it's like super crazy rules for bringing things in and all these things, and the game is not about symmetric balance. A lot of people think about game balance as all the factions will have the same powers and the same number of units, therefore everybody has an equal chance of winning. No, Dune is not like that. Dune is everybody's crazy.
Yeah, Dune presents each of the factions having their own advantages and disadvantages, which are appropriate to how they were written.
Yes.
Some advantages, for example, will have more control on the map at the very start. But then any movement they do, their spice is then paid to the person who earns whenever anyone moves troops around.
I can see my network thing going down. I'm putting the blackout reminder. Okay.
Others, like the Bene Gesserit, barely have units at the start of the game, but then their own unique powers allow them to steal an actual victory of a player if they plan things correctly. The interesting way that different factions try to win or try to beat each other up is even further complicated by the fact that the game allows what we call alliances.
Yes, you can work together, and your faction-specific powers have specific alliance benefits, and it just adds so much to it. So you can win together, but then possibly someone can still win victory because that's how they win.
Now, notice here on the side there is a round counter.
Yes,
and the number of rounds depends on the number of players. And if no one has hit their victory conditions by the time the round counter ends, that's when the Emperor wins.
No, the Spacing Guild wins.
The Spacing Guild.
Because they have maintained stability in the universe. So, and we'll to really celebrate the Dune board game, we have to talk about the factions. Because the powers are just so crazy, and that's really, really where the fun is. And I actually tagged it. So, let's go with our basic heroes. So the Atreides, House Atreides, for example, their main power is that they have prescience, so that they can kind of see into the future. So there's a thing about treachery cards that are played face down, and people bid blindly on cards they don't know what the value is and hope they get something good. The Atreides gets to look at these cards before the bidding, and then he decides if he will participate. And then there's a deck called the Spice deck, which determines where spice will be laid out on the map, and then people will have to go to harvest that spice. The Atreides also get to look at that deck to see, where's the spice going to appear? They know also. And then during battle, because there's a lot of elements that are in battle, you have to dial your wheel and choose how many force strength.
That you are willing to sacrifice to win the fight.
Who the leader is that is dedicated to the battle, he slots into this card. What other attack or defense cards are going to play. The Atreides gets to ask, show me one of those things. I get to see before I decide my battle wheel.
So the Atreides are all about having foreknowledge about what is to come. So they're general sluts in...
The components are beautiful. The art on this, I love. I love the style that they adapted for this game. And then the advanced stuff is like really crazy because suddenly they have a Kwisatz Haderach, which I'm not even going to get into. The Harkonnen are masters of treachery. So what do the Harkonnen get you? At the start of the game, you see everybody draws traitor cards, and then they get to pick one. And then that's their traitor that they get to reveal later on from another faction.
Someone who is actually helping you despite the best interests.
Yeah, so like if the two factions are engaged in the battle and one of them is the traitor card you hold, you can reveal that, hey, at the end of the battle, you didn't really win because that's my traitor. So
I'm the one who
I'm
really
the winner.
won.
Yeah. Harkonnen, instead of just keeping one, they keep all 4 traitor cards at the start.
So they have already a lot of people working for them.
Because they're the treacherous Harkonnen. And then, even the game, they have a bigger hand limit when it comes to treachery cards. They can hold up to 8. So, these things are kind of crazy as itself. And Atreides and Harkonnen start with more forces on the planet. The Fremen live on Dune, so you'd think they wouldn't have to get to the planet very much. So, what are their advantages? One, when you ship forces onto the planet, they can always ship people for free into the Great Flat, this big desert area. Because they're already there, they don't pay for shipping. They just appear. They move two territories instead of one because they're Fremen. And then if the worm appears, normally if the worm appears, it will kill people. They do not die. they get to ride the worm and go to anywhere other place on the map. And they also have the special victory condition that if no other faction has won by the last turn, and if the Fremen occupy certain territories,
certain strongholds,
they will win. They will win by certain strongholds. We are now 0 view count. I don't know if it's gonna black out.
Keep going.
So these are still the nice factions. This is not as crazy as some of the others. I'm sorry, I'm literally reading rules out for you. The really interesting factions now are like the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit do not only start with one force on the polar area and nothing else on planet. And then it's weird. At the beginning of the game, they have a power called Prediction, where they will choose one of their prediction cards, which faction will win on which turn. It does not have to be them. So they are pretty much guaranteed. They think the Harkonnens will win on turn 2. And if the Harkonnens do win on turn 2, the Harkonnens do not win, the Bene Gesserit win because they predicted it.
So part of the play of being a Bene Gesserit player is actually looking like you're supporting someone to help them win. But that's because that's your prediction and you win in the end.
But you have to get the turn right. So sometimes you'll delay them in the beginning and then hurt them later on. Then they also have spiritual advisors, which is every time someone ships forces onto the planet because they come from space.
One of their
units joins as a spiritual advisor,
and that unit is not considered a combatant.
Yeah, so it's just there saying, "Hi, I'm giving you advice," but at any time they can flip into a combatant and join in the fun. And then they have voice, which is they can tell an opponent not to play a certain card in their battle plan. For example, do not play a shield, and it's just good. The player will just have to follow. It's kind of fun. I don't know. The Emperor is more annoying because we talked about purchasing treachery cards earlier in the game. If there is no Emperor, the treachery cards go to the bank. If there is an Emperor, the money you pay for treachery cards goes to the Emperor. so money just naturally goes to him.
And bear in mind, if that's a multiple player game, if 5 people are buying cards, the Emperor gets all the money.
And then, of course, he has Sardukar, special units. Can you see the star? Not really, but there's a star. But he has special units that are worth twice normal units. But then to revive them, they count as 1. So he has but his main power is money. And it's so much fun. And then lastly, the Spacing Guild. They also start with very few things on planet. Similar to the Emperor, every time people pay to ship forces to the planet, you don't pay the bank, you pay the Spacing Guild because they brought your forces for you. And then they have 3 different types of shipping. They can ship off planet to Dune. They can ship any forces from one territory to another because they're the Spacing Guild, or they can ship any force from a territory back to reserves. It's so weird. They can recall stuff. And then for them, their shipping fee is half price, where everybody pays, of course, full rates to them. And then, yes, and as you mentioned earlier, they have the special victory condition that if nobody wins the game by turn 10, they win the game because they have prevented control of Dune.
Now, with the base game itself, you can see that there's so many factions to play. Of course, it can only get better with an expansion.
Hurrah! And the expansion features very book-centric factions, these being House Ix, or the Ixians, and the Tlaxu. How to talk about them? The Ixians are the technology people, and oh my god, their power set. I get to read something really funny. Okay, so first, start of the game, they get to They get to keep additional treachery cards, so they're actually pretty good at treachery also. During the bidding phase, they get to they draw another treachery card. They look at all of them and then they put one at the top or the bottom of the deck. So they control. They basically get to draft which ones come out,
which ones are available.
they have this weird thing for cyborgs and suborbs because their cyborgs are worth 2 force each, but their suborbs are worth
Only worth
half.
yeah. But if you play it right, you can actually manipulate the results of your losses to still keep your cyborgs, even if you lose some of your troops.
The best thing about House X is that they're strong. They start on a mobile stronghold. In fact, it's called the Hidden Mobile Stronghold, which is this little big ship there that it moves around the planet, and anytime it moves over spice that is not in a controlled territory, they collect it for free. They are literally flying around in a spaceship, collecting stuff. It's insane. Yeah. So I love it. I love the potential, but then we get the Talaxu, who we know are the genetic master manipulators from the books, and their faction, they take treachery to a new level because they have face dancers and not regular traitor cards. So
what are face dancers?
So at the start of the game, they don't get traitor cards. They get traitor cards, but they treat them as face dancers. So everybody gets their traitor cards. Then they shuffle the traitor deck and they get 3 cards. These are their face dancers. And then at any point, someone wins a battle using your face dancer. You can flip and say, "Hey, he's mine." And then the player who won doesn't get the winning stuff anymore. And then all his army is destroyed and replaced by more face dancer people. Because apparently the whole army were a bunch of clones. And then that's how you get forces on the planet. Because you start with nothing. Absolutely nothing on Dune. It's super evil. It's super evil. And they have special things like they don't have revival limits because there's a limit on how many units you can revive per turn.
And the cards keep circulating in terms of the new treasury
the face
cards.
dancer.
Yes.
Yeah, because they always will have more face dancers. As long as they've used all 3, they can get another 3. And then they can steal leaders that they can revive other people's leaders as their own. And then their main leader, Zoel, his strength is always the strength of the enemy. So it's a big X. So I don't know. Is this balanced? Probably not. But that's not how Dune works. Dune is about making the most of what you have. Now, it's surprising that Dune actually is a 2 to 6 player game. And we've tried some 2-player games, even in early quarantine. But it's like at 2 or 3 players, we find the game is unforgiving. The moment you make a mistake, you're probably going to lose. Because just with the recommended starting factions of Atreides and Harkonnen, if one of those players is not paying attention, someone is going to win by turn 2 or 3.
Yeah. So unlike other games wherein a victory condition is how many points you have at the end of the game, or if you defeat your opponent completely and obliterate them from the map, Dune's win conditions are literally that. They are conditions that if you meet them at a certain point in the phases and you have accomplished them, you win. So it is literally possible to actually win even on the very first turn if your opponent did not pay attention to you at all.
Yeah, and then you rush. Because like the Atreides and the Harkonnen start with strongholds. Then they can blitz
to specific
two strongholds. As long as they get 3, someone's going to win.
So the moment someone goes to a stronghold, you might be, you feel you're forced that you have to stop it. You have to enter that combat. And if you fail that combat,
the game is over.
And surprisingly, it's not a bad feeling. It's a nice feeling of realization that this game is not a game where you can just focus on what you want to do.
Because Arrakis is a harsh planet to live on. It is unforgiving, as is this game. But that is the beauty of this system, that they celebrate a very complicated book that people always talk about it being almost impossible to adapt to film and TV. And they made a game out of it, which is equally ambitious and cutthroat. And gosh, and I it's definitely not a beginner game. It's a game that I'm always worried about how people will receive it, whether or not they know the franchise. It's a tricky game. It has a lot of fiddly bits that does make it feel like it was invented in the 70s. The Gale Force 9 edition is beautifully updated in terms of art style and the like, but at its core, it is a 1970s game. And I don't say that derisively or negatively, but there are certain artifacts of games of the time, a certain amount of complexity, a certain amount of like pieces on the board, so many things.
Now, despite the game being quite hefty and quite crunchy, even if you are not familiar with the entire storyline, you have a synopsis in the manual that tells you what you need to know, so you'll appreciate the game more.
And notice how long that synopsis was.
Likewise, the game includes a small quick play manual, and the quick play manual actually approaches the factions. So as you go through the rules, it helps spell everything out, and it sort of gives you tips as to how to play specific factions.
And the characters speak as characters, explaining how the game works.
And lastly, the manual is kind enough to realize that not all players are amazing tacticians. So the manual itself offers tips, strategies
for each faction,
things you should consider when you are playing the different factions. This all the more becomes more interesting because there is a card that is most powerful in the advanced game that basically allows you to cancel the powers of other players.
Karama cards. And that is not a term I remember from the books, but Karama cards are the worst. Because anything like Bene Gesserit voice, or Fremen's ability to move 2 spaces on the sand, or I don't know, the spacing guild. You have to pay the spacing guild when you ship stuff. Play a Karama card, like no, it's not going to happen this turn.
Not this time. And that can be a moment that ruins everything. You know, you might have been someone who has gotten so used or gotten so accustomed to the advantage you get from a specific power. And in the turns, you've been using it, or maybe in the previous games, you've been using it. And then in this very moment, you have that perfect combat. You play and risk your best officer, and you go, I'm going to. Then the guy goes, Karama.
And it's bad when the expansion, Gale Force 9, continues to tweak and make this game as accessible as humanly possible without changing the core rules. The expansions manual, this table here is a guide to what Karama cards do per faction. It literally, what does Karama stop? And the fact that you need a guide, just how Karama cards work, is a weird kind of awesome. And I don't know, I don't mind at all.
The game doesn't stop with that. It actually goes and even pushes optional rules for alliances. Just in case you've gotten used to the basic game, you've gotten, pretty well at the advanced game, the optional rules for alliances allow you to see how you could change the game in many ways. Do you want a longer game? Target 4 strongholds instead of just 3. Alliances can only be between 2 players. Yes, you can have alliances with 3 players in them. Want for a longer short game? That exists. And that allows 3-player alliances with 4 strongholds to win. Want a more exotic game? Then you can have any number of players in an alliance, but it needs 5 strongholds to win. So you will have all these different flavors to play the same game, but these little tweaks still change it so much because in this game, negotiation and alliances is such a huge thing.
Which is super reflective of the book, that it's a large part of it is about politics and that sort of personal negotiation and relationships, and I'm all for it. I'm super all for it.
Now,
out of breath.
We have the upcoming Imperium game.
Oh my god, there's a new Dune game.
The Imperium is amusing because it sort of like is now calling back to Rex Twilight Imperium, covering Twilight and calling it Dune Imperium. Oh, there goes the duck.
Quackers!
Being a deck building game rather than a full strategic game, it has that interest of, are they trying to find a way to simplify combat? Are they combining combat, treachery, and alliance cards into now one single system that you play through?
We don't know. It just got announced. I haven't seen the rules released. There just been like some early concept photos of like the components, but that's all we see, and it's a lot of movie inspired art.
Board Game Geek mentions the possibility of being a 1-to-4 game. It says there's deck bag/pool building, so we're not sure which one, but the most interesting thing for us is that there is worker placement.
Oh, I mean, and if you look at the official write-up on the Direwolf digital website, they do describe it as a deck building work. It has elements of deck building and worker placement. Don't know what that means. Don't know what that means. This is the same people who gave us Clank, which gave us deck building, dungeon crawling.
Looking at the images from Board Game Geek, it has a very abstract feel when it comes to the planet compared to the map in this game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the art and the cards does remind you of the movie.
It's very movie.
So you
It's
will
very
find
new. It's very Denis Villeneuve.
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 There's a rich, ample supply of wooden tokens to enjoy. Everything from what looks like ships to teardrops to hexagons. Admittedly, it looks interesting. I can't wait to get a chance to play it. But until then, we have this Dune game to play.
And it's so funny we barely played Rex because of that 3-player requirement. It complicated things. I'm gonna flash very briefly before we go the new Dune components because we've been raising a box this whole time. But if you look at this there, look at that. Look at it's many wooden things, and then people everywhere. So I'm very intrigued. I'm very intrigued where this is gonna go. Let's blow it up a moment. Wow! Look at all those wooden things. We're always keen for more, more wood to add weight because wood for sheep. So, that's Dune stuff, and then it's the guys who made Clank. So I don't know how it's gonna go. My last shout out is that you have to put this in the box later. My dad 3D printed a specific Dune holder for the Gale Force 9 edition. So it holds the shield, the privacy shield, so that I can hide my components, and then I can slot my armies, my leader, put my spice there. Technically, you could 3D print enough for each of the factions, but so far, I only have my one from my dad, so I'm the only one with this. Thanks, Dad.
I'm realizing the teaser images. I'm not sure if the text has distorted on purpose. On the cards.
I'm sure.
Or if it's just artifacts from a faraway photo.
Yeah, or
it does look like Baron.
Well, it's a render.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even like it's not actual photography. I think it's like a CAD render style thing. So,
CAD. Well,
whatever.
Dated yourself again.
Excuse me. Okay, then any quick wait, I'm a guy who celebrates Dune. How dated do I need to be?
So Pico says, "Oh no, I'm late." Kenny adds, "This episode is sponsored by Rocky's dad."
Super. Great job.
Mitch, of course, celebrates the duck call. Mai celebrates Ride the Worm, Fremen plus hand movement. And Rocky's dad rocks.
Yes.
So yeah.
Because worm.
This is a game we would love to play more often. It's a game that we celebrate more with players who know the book, or at least know the material. It has that.
But the game is crazy enough that I think as far as franchise games go, it's a little easier to jump into than like playing Battlestar Galactica, where I feel is very, very thematic. Dune is so abstract and weird enough. It's like playing, what's the Cosmic Encounters, where it has different alien factions and they have all strange powers, and you don't need to know what the story is. You just play the factions as they are. And Dune, especially this edition, is super designed for that. Gale Force 9, what the main contribution, apart from updating the art, is really trying to explain the rules as clearly as possible.
Yes.
Generous player guides. Your shield contains your strategy for your faction and how you should play.
So first-time players can actually read that and get a better idea how to play the game.
So it's a very smart love letter to the 1979 game, and I'm glad we have a copy. I'm glad we just got the expansion despite lockdown. We just need more players to throw to the sandworm.
And that is our 30 plus minutes of talking about Dune, the board game. But we had a lot of fun, and we hope that you will join us next time.
Yep. So if you have questions for me and Toby, whether about games we like, about Dune as a universe that I love, or whatever, and suggestions for episodes, fill up this bit.ly form, Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, all Toby No Shade, and RG Suniko.
You can also check out our blog, that's baduypride.com. You'll see our previous episodes, photos, and snippets of our life.
yeah, and yeah, so feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you think about the Dune board game or any of the other tabletop experiences created for Dune. Has anyone played the dice game? What's that like?
Mhm.
How do I get it? But then, I think I'm going to try to collect all the Dune games for my life. And yes, so be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride.
Thanks for watching.
Rawr, the worm. Okay.